Okay, then. So, this is a PowerPoint presentation about how to lose body fat for improved body composition and health. Now, I genuinely don't know how long this presentation is going to be. So, I'm going to try and keep it as short, as clear as I possibly can. But it may well be that I actually take the decision to kind of split it up, and split it down into more manageable chunks so that you are able to access it, watch through the content, make your notes, and of course, then go away and apply it, which is the whole goal of this. The whole aim, really, for when I created this resource was so that you can go about approaching your nutrition on your own and begin to understand kind of where you position your calories, because there's a lot of poor information out there. We're going to talk about kind of what actually matters in relation to your dieting journey, whether that be, dieting for fat loss or, dieting for muscle building. It's the same thing. It's just that we have to just then adjust the numbers to change the energy balance equation. So I'm going to get stuck in and to kind of just give you an understanding of what we're going to look at. We're going to look at what really matters for fat loss. I am targeting fat loss, but like I say, you can still use all of the information in this document to understand muscle building. How to calculate your maintenance calories, how to establish a calorie deficit for fat loss, how to structure your weekly calories, how to track your progress, what to do when progress stops, and ideal amounts for protein, fats, and carbohydrates. So let's get stuck in. Now, what I have done, because I know that there will be some people that will watch over this and they may well want to go off and do a little bit more exploring for themselves. What I didn't want to do was create almost this presentation and just give you my thoughts and my opinions on what works for me, because unfortunately, there's a lot of people doing that, and wrongly so, because actually they're just going off their own belief systems, what's worked for themselves in the past. So every bit of information that I'm going to give you in this presentation is backed up by the evidence, the research that we have available to us. So energy balance and debunking the myths, first and foremost. So of course, often when people are approaching a fat loss phase, a weight loss journey, whatever you want to refer to it as, there's often a stigma attached to certain diets, and certain dieting strategies get pushed forward as this is the only way or the way that you need to go about your fat loss journey. Now, as you can tell in these two kind of studies and overviews, and again, I'm not going to read these off the slides. I don't want to bore you to death here. I don't want this to be death by PowerPoint. But these two studies basically showed that there was no benefit, no added benefit to a low carbohydrate or a low fat diet. And actually, it was just down to the individual. So, as you can see here, and I will read this off the page, but have great variability of long-term effects. Moreover, the difference in weight loss among these diets is only 1 to 2 kilograms or less. So, the diets that were observed through these studies basically showed very little significance. And the point I'm trying to make here is that don't get lost in the things that don't matter. And we're going to talk about what matters in a short second. But most people focus in on the method. The method of, I'm going to go keto. I'm going to go... I'm trying to think of diets off the top of my head. Low carb, low fat. Let's just stick it at that. They get obsessed with the method, but they don't actually understand the principle. And we're going to go over the principle in a short second. But just to summarize and just to conclude, these two studies basically found and concluded that it should be on the basis of your personal preference. That's it. So when you're choosing a dieting strategy, a method to help you to lose body fat, the evidence, the research supports this, that, there is there's no perfect or better diet for you to go and utilize. It just, all that you need to do is decide on a dieting strategy that works for you. But with that in mind, we've still got to have one key principle in place, which brings me on to what really matters. What actually matters when it comes to weight gain, weight loss, fat loss, muscle building, whatever you want to refer it to it as. It all comes down to energy balance. And I'm sure you've probably come across this before if you are or have been interested in fitness and health, and perhaps you've gone away and maybe you've tried some diets in the past, or maybe you've done a little bit of reading and research around this. But I like this quote that's taken from Precision Nutrition. By the way, Precision Nutrition is a fantastic resource for anyone that's looking into their nutrition and looking to sort of look into their own health and fitness journey. But it kind of defines energy balance as the relationship between the energy taken in versus the energy that is that goes out. So if we think about energy in as all of the food, the drinks, basically the calories that you're going to be consuming, the energy that you're going to be consuming. And the thing is with that energy doesn't just disappear. If there is too much of it and we are not necessarily utilizing all of that energy, guess what? It's going to be stored, and it's going to be stored most likely in the form of body fat, depending on obviously what's going on and kind of the stimulus that we're presenting and how great of a surplus perhaps that energy balance is in. And then obviously energy out is pretty much your daily activity. And we're going to go through this again, but it could be your daily activity. It could be what's sometimes I know referred to by Mac Nutrition. Again, a fantastic resource, Martin McDonald. Go check him out. He does a podcast, very, very useful hints and tips for nutrition. But he talks about NENAT. So I think I'm going to get this right. Non-exercise exercise activity thermogenesis, I think is what he's referring to, which basically just means fidgeting. And of course, your direct activity, that would all kind of constitute your energy out. But I like the representation of these balancing scales. And as we can see there, if the output is outweighed by the energy that's going in, we're going to be gaining weight. And the opposite for the weight loss. And of course, if we want to stabilize our weight and we want to find this maintenance amount, this maintenance period or maintenance approach, where we are simply just holding our scale weight, we're holding body fat, we're holding our body composition, we need to find this balance between what's going in and what's going out. So hopefully that is that clarifies what actually matters here, because this is the principle. This is the principle of weight loss, of weight gain, and there's no getting around this. So no matter what you hear in relation to this diet is better, or ignore it. Focus on the fact that we're talking principle here. This is science. This is the human body. This is what we know about the human body. Okay, so now that you understand what actually matters, what I want to talk about is calculating the output. Because what we want to try and establish, you're obviously watching this because you want to either lose weight, maybe gain weight. I'm guessing you probably want to lose weight or lose body fat. Same thing. So we have to have an understanding of, right, how much food do we need to be consuming? Now, in order for us to do that, we need to have an understanding of the amount of activity, the energy output. So the energy output includes, and you can kind of see again within this scale image, but to calculate your output, you have to have an understanding of your basal metabolic rate, exercise activity thermogenesis, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, and the thermic effect of feeding. Now, don't worry, because actually this isn't something for you to be too concerned with or too worried about. Let's go through and let's simplify these terms. Basal metabolic rate is pretty much the energy that you're going to be burning whilst at rest in a fasted state, so without food. Think about really the amount of energy that's required to keep you living, to keep you alive. that is your basal metabolic rate. So of course, it's important that we have an understanding of the amount of calories that you are burning just day to day at rest. And as you can see, that's a huge amount that Escalante et al., I think I've said the name correctly, 60 to 70% of the energy that you burn is coming from the energy used just at keeping your vital functions alive. So, of course, we need to have an understanding and appreciation for how many calories, how much energy does your body need at this moment in time to keep you alive. Within that output equation, though, we've also got the amount of activity, the amount of calories burned through exercise. So this is your exercise activity thermogenesis. So for instance, if I'm performing 10,000 steps per day in comparison to 5,000 steps per day, of course, I'm going to be burning a lot more at 10,000. I'm moving more. And that might sound obvious, but again, that's something that is sometimes missed. So we've got to have an appreciation for the exercise activity thermogenesis. And that would be, that's probably not the best example, because actually I'm giving an example for the non-exercise activity thermogenesis there in the form of steps. So your exercise activity thermogenesis would be, for instance, your cardiovascular training, your weight training, your sporting activity. So it's the direct amount of energy burned within a specific exercise bout. And then we have the non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is shortened to NEAT and refers to maybe like daily steps. But it goes beyond this, and actually, again, like I say, the NENAT, and this is where it kind of goes off into a bit of a tangent, but we've got fidgeting and just kind of blinking, as daft as it sounds. But your body is so good at changing this energy equation in order to survive. And this is what people will find is when they lose more and more weight, their body will slow down these processes and the body will reach a point that's known as metabolic adaptation or adaptive thermogenesis, where it becomes much harder to lose weight or lose body fat. And perhaps you've experienced this because there is probably less of you, and therefore, or for the fact of that because you're on less energy, your body has got less energy to utilize, and therefore your body is making these subconscious decisions to kind of slow certain processes down. So this is the reason this slide was in, was just to give you an appreciation of the things that go into this. We've got the thermic effect of food as well, but again, we don't necessarily need to go too much into that. The main focal point is going to be to have an appreciation of where is your BMR. I want to give you an idea of how to calculate that, and then I want to give you an idea on how to calculate your activity level and how to approach that. So let's get stuck into that, because this is pretty much what you're here for. You're here to try and understand, how do I work out my calorie goal in order for me to be able to lose body fat and start losing weight. So this is a nice, simple way of going about it. And don't get me wrong, like I could show you all of the different equations. It would just confuse matters. I like this equation. This equation is taken from Mac Nutrition, from Martin McDonald and his nutritional company. I like this because it's very, very simple. And it just simply involves taking your body weight in kilograms and multiplying it by 24 if you're a male, or by 22 if you are a female. Now, in doing that, what that would give you is that would allow you to calculate your BMR. So remember, your BMR is the calories that you're burning at rest. Once we have established that, the next step is then to multiply this by a physical activity level. Now, one thing to make note of is I'm not actually going to show you how to calculate your calories based on the activity that you're actually doing per week. The reason I'm not going to do that is because, as you will see in a short second, it can get very, very complicated very quick. And to be honest, as long as you're kind of tracking your progress in line with the calorie goal that you've set yourself, as I will explain in a short while, you don't really need to know that. You don't really need to go into that much depth. However, we are going to account for this, and this is where this physical activity level comes in. So what we're going to do is we're going to take your body weight in kilograms, and if you're a male, you're multiplying it by 24. If you're female, you're multiplying it by 22. That will give you an estimated, and that's the important word, it's an estimated value for your basal metabolic rate, the amount of calories that you're going to be burning at rest. We're then going to multiply this by a physical activity level. Now, again, what I'm giving you here are calculations that have been based on evidence that's been carried out into this area of nutrition. So again, these values will vary from person to person, and I've just taken this again. It's kind of been adapted from Helms et al., but it's been then taken, I've taken it from Marty McDonald's course, his Mac Nutrition Mentoring Lab. And what we're looking at is a sedentary lifestyle, lightly active, active, very active. And as you can see, there's some examples that have been given for that. So what you've got to decide is, where does your activity level sit? And what I would say is be cautious to not overestimate this, because a lot of people will go wrong here by overestimating the amount of activity they actually do per day. So I would start where actually, so for instance, let's say I am a sedentary person. I'm going to take whatever the answer was for my BMR, and I'm going to multiply it by 1.1, and that will give me my total calorie goal in regards to maintenance. So that's important to note. This is about me finding my maintenance calories. So if I'm thinking maintenance, I'm thinking about weight stability, keeping my weight as it is, not losing body fat, holding on to my current position. So let me show you an example of this. So I've done this for an 80 kilogram male, 80 kilograms, we've multiplied it by 24, which is the value we're doing for males. That gives 1,920 calories. That is a BMR. That's the amount of calories that are required to keep this person alive, to keep the energy, give them the energy that they require. I then go into step 2, and for step 2, I then multiply this by the activity level, which gives me the suggested maintenance calories. Now, this is before exercise expenditure, but as I said, I'm not going to go through this today because I do not want to overcomplicate matters. So I've multiplied that. I've now got 2,112 calories. That is my daily goal for achieving maintenance. So if I want to hold my current weight, that is my maintenance target. And remember, it's an estimate. So for instance, because we've not done the exercise energy expenditure, if you're performing loads and loads of exercise, you might find that you've calculated that goal, that target, and you're losing lots of weight. That's when then you would want to start to just add a little bit more food, and if that wasn't the goal. So this is why, and again, I'll talk about this in a second, it's important just to track kind of once you've figured out how much food you're going to be consuming and setting yourself on, to track how your body then responds so that you can make the adjustments that you need to. So step 3, we're then going to just calculate the total weekly calories. Now, the reason I've put this in is often people see it as a daily thing, but actually I want to show you this as a weekly total, a weekly target to work towards, and I'm going to show you why that is in a short second. You'll see kind of how I've structured it across the week. Just to pick out, just to give you an understanding as to why I'm not going into the energy expenditure here, because obviously I've said that this is something, we've calculated this before we've calculated how much exercise activity you've done. You can see, and you can find more information at this web address. You'll be able to download the handout notes for this. But you can see this has a really detailed table. Again, that's all been taken from this resource here that basically breaks down the activity and the likely number of calories per body weight that a person would burn for 1 hour of that activity. And again, you can go into real depth with this. I don't think you need to. I think you just need to keep it relatively straightforward. And as I say, as long as you are then assessing progress, you will be absolutely fine. Okay, So we found out the weekly total calories. We've worked out the daily average goal for holding your weight where it is right now. But now, if the goal is fat loss, we need to be eating less than that amount, potentially. If I want to build muscle or gain weight, I need to be eating more than that amount. So let's have a look at how we establish this, a calorie deficit for fat loss. Now, I'm going to, do we go through this? So what can we draw from this? Right. To keep this really, really simple, if you were looking to lose, and I'm not sure whether I've actually put this in later down the line. Okay, so yes, I have. So let's just skip ahead to this. This is a cool little example for anyone that wants to go a little bit more serious and start tracking the rate of loss. But let's skip past that. I don't feel as though we need that. So let's look at this. How to establish calorie deficit fat loss. We've done the first kind of 2 steps. We've got to this point where we've recognized our total weekly calorie goal. Now, what I want us to try and figure out at this stage is I want us to try and figure out how to establish the ideal calorie deficit. Again, like, I do want to keep this relatively simple. I don't want to make this too complicated. Of course, this kind of builds on this slide. What I want you to take into consideration is that for you to lose a pound per week, you are going to be looking at around about 3,500 calories beneath that maintenance amount of food. So if I wanted to keep this really, really simple, I would just simply take that number, subtract 3,500. Simple as that. And then divide that number by 7 to work out what my daily goal was, if that was something that I wanted to work out. If I was looking at losing a kilogram per week, then I would go closer to taking 7,700 calories away from that. What you've got to understand is that these numbers aren't perfect. They aren't completely accurate, and they're going to be very much individualized to your own circumstance, your own situation. So I don't, again, want you to overthink this process, but ultimately what you need to understand is that in order for you to lose weight, you need to eat less than this amount. And a good starting point, I think, for everybody kind of going with this, if we want to keep it really simple, is just subtract 3,500 from that amount. That'll give you your total weekly amount of calories. And then from there, what I would simply do is just distribute that across your week however you would prefer. You could go more aggressive. You could go less aggressive. That will come down to you. That will come down to you. You've just got to remember that this has to be something that you are maybe able to sustain, something that you can still enjoy. And if you are performing a lot of activity in the form of maybe weight training in the gym because your goal is fat loss, not just weight loss, then you've got to bear in mind that the more aggressive that you go, the more likely you're going to reach a burnout. And actually you are not necessarily giving your body what it requires to go in and perform at its very best. So I would err on the side of caution, go a little bit less rather than too much. Assess how your body responds from this and to then take it from there. Again, guys, if you've got questions about this, by the way, like as you're going through this, all you need to do is put them, message them across, whether you've come across this on emails or Instagram or in the Facebook group. All you need to do is just message across a question. More than happy to go through this and clarify. I know this sometimes, nutrition does involve a lot of maths, and I know it can sometimes come across a little bit too complicated. But ultimately, you're going to take your total weekly calories that you've worked out, and you're going to subtract probably around 3,500 from the total. And then it's up to you how you distribute this. So I've used a different example here because, again, I want to prove to you the point that it doesn't really matter how you go about this. And this is how you make nutrition fit you, your lifestyle, how you make it more sustainable for what you're trying to achieve. So let's say the total calories that we've got for the week is 12,000. that's our total calorie amount. So let's say we've taken off about 2,784 calories from this total so that we are in and establishing a calorie deficit. So we now know that across the week, our total calories is 12,000. It doesn't matter how you go about this. As long as you stick to that goal by the end of the week, you know that you can then track your progress and have an understanding of, okay, how is my body actually responding to this amount of food? So if you wanted to literally fast for Monday and not eat anything, that is not a problem. That is absolutely fine if that's the goal, if that helps you to achieve your goal. Don't get me wrong, there are aspects of from the perspective of muscle building that might not be suitable for, especially if you're training and exercising on that day. But again, what I want you to understand from this is it's completely your call. There is no right time or right nutrient split or anything like that. It's just about, you've set yourself a total weekly goal. Now find a way that's sustainable and allows you to go and achieve this. So what I've given you is three different examples. I'll give you an example where we follow an approach where the calories are the same every single day. Now, for some people, that might not be preferred. Some people like a drink at the weekend, maybe like a meal with family or friends, and they want some extra calories to kind of borrow. And that's what we refer to this process as calorie borrowing. So as long as the total calorie goal works out, it doesn't matter where we draw those calories from. So for instance, I'm going to take 400 away from the Monday, 400 away from the Tuesday. And that then banks me 800 extra calories for later in the week. Now, I can choose to maybe have those extra 800 calories on this Friday, for instance. But how I've done it is I've split it down the middle, and I've added 400 calories on to both of these days. So all I've done is added that 400 onto what was going to be 1,715. And hopefully this makes sense. Hopefully this gives you an appreciation that this is how you can make it sustainable. If you're someone that likes more sociable weekend and in the week can be a little bit more structured, this is your opportunity where you can allow for yourself to have a little bit more food. Example 3 would be a little bit more of maybe pushing towards performance. So sometimes, we might utilize training day nutrition and rest day nutrition. Perhaps this would be beneficial from a psychological perspective. You've got more food on the day that you're going to be exercising. There's no real benefit in terms of, from what I know, of having your training day nutrition higher, bar really that psychological advantage. But again, if that helps you to adhere to the program, then fantastic. Choose what works for you. Again, it comes back to the research on that very, very first slide that I showed you. It's about picking a nutritional approach that works for you as the individual. Okay, I'm going to finish this off because I'm nearly there. I know it doesn't look like that, but I'm going to whiz through because a lot of the stuff you'll be able to read off the slides. How to track your progress, circumferential measurements, progress photos, clothing, very important. Select one day every week. Assess what's going on. Where people go wrong is that they're, 1, not consistent from day 1 to day 7. But 2, they don't have a control of actually assessing what's going on. How is the body responding to this 12,000 calories total goal and their activity that they're currently performing? And if after, let's say, and I think I've put it here in terms of what to do when progress stops, it is so easy just to kind of go, you know what, I'm going to drop the calories or I'm going to add more exercise in. But what is harder is for someone to actually reflect on the fact that they could have been more consistent across the week. If you are snacking, if you are not tracking everything, if you are going out on an evening and just having it, even if you don't think it's going to impact, trust me, it all adds up. And it's very, very easy to make these mistakes. It's very easy also if you're using something like MyFitnessPal, again, to make mistakes with the way you're tracking. So your first question is always, how consistent am I actually being with the approach that I've set myself? And if there are questions around that, then you need to look at that first before you start making your life more challenging by dropping food or adding more exercise in. But again, let's say you get to the point where you've assessed this over a 14 to 21 day period I like to give it that amount of time because, again, remember, your weight is going to fluctuate. There are going to be times when it's not as accurate, especially for female trainees. You've got to recognize that you are going to experience fluctuations in line with your menstrual cycle. But the same can happen with guys in terms of just weight fluctuations. It's normal. And again, if you're weighing yourself just once a week, bear in mind that you could be looking at an anomaly result there. It might be, if it's not obsessive for you, be beneficial to measure that a bit more frequently across the week and work off of averages. But if you don't see progress after a 14 to 21 day period, ask the question, are you being consistent? Could you be doing more with the current plan? But if the answer is no, I've stuck to this, I've been consistent, I've been on this for some time now, it isn't working for me, am I due a change? If the answer is yes, that change is going to come from either calories going in or the exercise and the amount of exercise you're performing. So for instance, I might add in 60 minutes of cardiovascular exercise. I might add in an extra set per exercise if I'm doing weight training. There are many, many examples of this. Again, I'm going to keep them to as simple as those two. In regards to a calorie change, it could be anywhere from 50 to 500 calories per day. If you're someone that weighs only 50 kilograms, it's probably going to be closer to that 50 calories per day than 500. Bear that in mind. Again, this is going to be interchangeable based on the individual. What I've found, and I've put this here, is often the smallest of changes is what's needed to break a plateau. And if you set up your calorie, if you set up your diet well in the first instance, and you set up your training where it's sustainable, it's feasible, you're able to recover, which is a huge point of it. You've got to be able to recover from it. You've got to be able to stick to it consistently. If you set everything up right, you shouldn't need to make changes for a long, long time. I've had guys that have been with me 3 to 4 months, and I've not had to make a change to their program, simply for the simple fact of that we've managed to get everything in place and we've worked on their ability to recover from stress, good sleep, good digestion, good lifestyle habits. So please bear that in mind. But ultimately, if you have hit a period where things have slowed down, and that might be from what I talked about before, remember, as you go through this process, your body will adapt. Your body will find a way to slow things down. And although the calories that you might have set yourself on originally, you were losing loads of weight on, your body might adjust its activity output, and that number of calories might have moved from being this equation to now being this equation, where we've reached this maintenance. If you are not losing weight, and this is something to bear in mind, if you are not losing weight, you are not in a calorie deficit. No matter what you think, you are not in a calorie deficit. If you're in a calorie deficit, you're losing. So at the point where you stop losing body fat or you stop gaining weight, you know that you've probably reached that maintenance period and your body has found a way to adapt to that. Or, as I say, you're just not being consistent with the approach that you've set. Now, at this point, you could switch this off and you have pretty much the tools, hopefully, to go off and have a crack at this. But what I want to very quickly go through is diet breaks and protein, carbs, and fats. So bear in mind that you shouldn't be spending your whole year dieting. If you're doing that, you're probably not doing it right, first of all. But also, it's going to be a very exhaustive process. I prefer to have short, focused periods of dieting in which you've got no social commitments coming up, you've got a clear diary, and you can focus in on yourself for, let's say, anywhere between 6 to 20 weeks. To then say to yourself, at the end of this period, I'm going to have 2 weeks where I increase my food up to a maintenance level. Now, how you go about that, there are a couple of ways, and I've listed them here. I'm not going to go through that today, but again, that might be something for you to consider or ask a question around, because again, you don't want to be in the position where you're always on a low intake of food. It's not good for you. It's not good for your body. It's going to develop obsessive tendencies around food, potentially. And we've got to think long term about this. So I'm not going to say any more on that. If you want to know a little bit more, ask the questions. Maybe I'll do a presentation on diet breaks at a later stage. Final thing, protein, carbs, and fats. Protein, if you are bothered about fat loss and you want to retain muscle tissue and the goal is to look great by the end of this, you do want to pay attention to protein. Calories are king. That's the first thing to kind of make mention of. But again, in regards to your protein amounts, you can see here 1.8 to 2.7 grams per kilogram. All you're going to do is take your weight. So let's say we use that example before, 80 kilograms, multiply it by a number between here. That will give me my protein goal. Please bear in mind that if you are carrying a lot more weight, that you probably are going to need a slightly lower equation there, because you can imagine that if you are carrying a lot of weight at the moment, your protein amount is going to be so high that it's probably going to be unrealistic for you and too difficult to consume and potentially cause you some digestive problems. Again, more for the serious guys, nutrient timing, thoughts on that. Again, there is some benefit towards that for muscle building and muscle retention, not for fat loss. It doesn't matter nutrient timing for fat loss. Do not be concerned about, if you are just trying to lose weight and losing body fat, do not be bothered about 4 to 6 meals or certain hours per meal. Please do not worry about that. Ignore this. Fat amounts, anywhere between 10 to 25% of your daily calorie intake. As long as you are including a variety of food sources, guess what? You're probably going to get your dietary fats in, and then the remaining amount of food can go to your carbohydrates. Your big focus should be calories, protein. That should be your biggest focus. So, final thing. If you want to do more reading, if you want to do more research, and you want to just kind of check that I am just not making this stuff up, here are all the resources, the studies that you can go and do your own research around. But hopefully what that has given you is the tools, the know-how, a start point. I know that some of this might not make complete sense. It's hard to get everything across within the space of, 40 minutes and a small presentation. But this gives you the start point in terms of understanding your calorie goal, how to go about creating that for yourself. But ultimately, whatever you come up with, whatever you calculate is an estimate. Don't forget that. It's an estimate. And the only way that you're going to know if that goal that you've set yourself is right is by being consistent across a full 7 to 14 day period, really. Assessing how you are progressing, and then making a judgment from there in terms of whether you are seeing the progress that you are wanting to see. And of course, making manipulations and changes if that isn't the case. As always, if you have any questions over any of this, all you need to do is drop me a message, ask me the question. Please, please, please do not suffer in silence. I did that for many, many years. That's the last thing I want for people, hence why I like creating these resources. Please drop me a message, and good luck with it. Hope all goes well, and hope to speak to you soon.